and then you can catch up on the YouTube channel directly. Okay.
Cheers.
So welcome to the September meetup. As normal, please just make sure that you are staying on mute during the course of the session. Just to try and minimize the background noise. We don't mind the conversation, so if you have questions and that, come off mute. Or use the raise hands feature or the meeting chat, so we'll keep an eye on both of them during the course of the session. Okay. So the agenda tonight, we're going to go through some of the news items that are up there. Then Michael is going to be taking us through model and canvas-driven apps, or model-driven and canvas apps. So he's going to take us through some cool things inside there. Mornay is going to take us through some of the updates on the Center of Excellence. David's going to then do the tech tip, and then we're going to open up the floor to anything else that you guys maybe want to contribute and show what you're doing. We really want to try and get you guys sharing some of the cool things that you're doing in these sessions, so we are going to have times available for it. And we will probably be, sorry, Mornay, you are giving a lot of background noise there. I'm muting you there. Okay, so please come to these sessions with the idea that you can also share. So if there's something cool that you're doing that you think others can take advantage of, or to help inspire others, please don't hesitate to share inside the session, okay? If there is anything you want specifically covered in the session as well, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you want to cover anything also, please let us know. This is a community event, so it's about the community. So if you want to get involved, please just shout, okay? No problem. Okay, so let's jump into the news. Now, we have announced Ignite for November. So it's going to be the 2nd to the 4th. Once again, digital event. Can't wait for these to be back in person again. I really miss going to Orlando. This is a really great events now. Digitally, it is still awesome. There's a lot of great content, and you can usually end up seeing a lot more with the digital event because you can save items to your backpack and that. So just keep an eye on it. Registration should be opening up soon, and these are also free events because they are digital now. So you end up saving the cost of having to fly all the way to Orlando and the hotel costs and everything else. Now you can do everything in the comfort of your own home. And there's a lot of great stuff in there. And there's always some awesome announcements and demos and training available at the event. So keep an eye on it. Check it out. As soon as registration's open, we will let you know. But just tentatively reserve those dates for now. Okay. First item on the news is the updates that we're doing on the COE, or the Center of Excellence Starter Kit. Now, I'm not going to be diving into too much detail on this because Mornay is going to cover this in depth. He's got some amazing demos lined up. No pressure, Mornay. So you'll be able to explain some of the new features and that coming into the COE Starter Kit. Another new announcement, we now have app side panes available within model-driven apps. So this gives you the ability to have one or more panes on the far right-hand side, and these panes will contain model-driven app pages. So any views or forms that you want available on the side there, you'll be able to start bringing those in now. This is in public preview, so you can start testing it out. You can see it also supports the new custom pages as well, which is really awesome. So these model-driven apps are becoming a lot more intuitive, user-friendly. You're getting a lot more content onto one screen, so it's going to be a lot more useful at the end of the day. Another announcement, we're adding a lot more access to some of the developer resources on the platform. So you'll see there is a new slide out menu, which is going to give you access to things like the environment unique names, any IDs, as well as links to the APIs, as well as the discovery endpoints. And there's going to be links to other documentation to help you in the developer area, as well as a lot of samples and other content inside there, just to help developers getting used to this platform and taking most advantage of it as possible. Another new announcement, we've got the public preview of maintenance window management now. So now you can go and set up certain environments so that they are patched or updated only during a specific time window. because as we know, all our businesses operate at different times. We need to have services up and running at certain scenarios. So what this gives you the ability to do is go and specify that specific timeout window for maintenance to happen on that environment. Okay. Once again, public preview, start testing it out and playing around with it. Last bit of news, we now have the ability to change the format on some of the fields in the Dataverse. We're also introducing 2 new formats. So now we're bringing in JSON as a format. Now, it's not going to give you the ability to verify anything within the JSON code. It is simply going to give you a place to store that information. Okay, so at this stage, there's no verification done or no validation on the correctness or anything like that, but it's rather there just so that you can store it in the correct format. You can also, there's a new rich text field that is going to be available now, and there's going to be additional controls coming to both canvas-based as well as model-driven apps in the near future. Now, when you are changing the format, so say, for example, you go and change the text to maybe an email field, one thing to note is it doesn't change the underlying data. It just changes the way the data is presented through the UI. Okay, so it's not going to change existing data. It's just going to change the way that that is presented online. Okay. Any other question or anything else that maybe someone has picked up in the news that they feel is important to mention now, or anything else that you've come across that you think is really cool that you would like to share with the rest of the team? Okay, great stuff. So next item on the agenda is the updates to the COE starter kits. Wait, I'm lying. The model and canvas apps get hitched. So Michael, I'm going to hand over to you.
Why, thank you. You are so kind. Okay, let's do that. Turn on my camera. Audio check, sound check, all good?
Everything looks good.
Okay, cool. Cool beans. So, will you keep an eye on the IM window? But otherwise, if anyone wants to ask a question, just come off mute and ask as I go through this. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Michael. I'm a technical specialist at Microsoft, and I focus on the Power Platform and Dynamics 365. And much of the time, I end up assembling Canvas apps and model-driven apps for solutions for our customers. And so what I'm going to talk about today is essentially the coming together of those 2 worlds of the Canvas apps and model-driven apps. And I'm going to spend most of the time on bullet point number 1, which is the modern model app designer, which brings these 2 worlds together. And I'm going to demo it. It's all in preview, so just like some things are a little buggy sometimes, and sometimes it's a little slow, but you'll get the gist of how it all works. Because I was in this kind of world and it's a preview feature, I thought I might as well also just spend a few minutes at the end and share three other preview features specific to model-driven apps, which are app side panes, which Jonathan briefly mentioned a moment ago, in-app notifications, and also using Azure Application Insights and getting model-driven apps to send their instrumentation information to those. And what I'm going to do, I see my family's just arrived home and they're shouting, so I'm just going to mute myself for 2 seconds and jump onto a different headset. So sorry.
Okay, am I back? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. They just love me so much they scream when they come in the door. Okay, cool. So let's get going on this. So so Canvas apps and model-driven apps get hitched, and I guess the ultimate vision is that one day you won't have to think about, should I create a model-driven app or should I create a Canvas app? You just create an app, and in it are elements of model-driven and in it are elements of Canvas. So that's the kind of long-term vision. But right now, kind of step one is being able to use Canvas screens, if you want to call it that, or a Canvas app inside a model-driven app, and that's essentially what I'm going to show you. So what you should all have in your tenants now, it's launched in preview, is the ability to create a model-driven app, and you get this new choice, which allows you to use this modern app designer, and that's the key. And essentially, there's three things I'm going to show you in there. The first one is being able to assemble your navigation through this new designer. The second one is using Canvas pages inside your model-driven app. And the third one is the new command button designer to add buttons to the ribbon. So those are the three things I'm basically going to focus on. And that's enough of slides. Let's jump to a demo. And I'm going to give some tips along the way. And once you've heard 10 tips, just shout bingo. And then David will organize you a prize. Okay, so my first tip is when you're creating apps in this way, using this new designer, they should always be in a solution. In fact, all your apps should always be in a solution anyway, but there's some limitations if you don't use a solution. So I'm going to start off just by creating a solution, and I'm going to call this my vehicle solution. I've actually got a table already that allows me to look at details of vehicles, cars. Think of this as like a vehicle asset management solution that allows me to onboard vehicles into my organization and then maintain and track them. I won't show you too much of the details behind it, but you'll get the gist in a few minutes. So I'm going to create a new solution file. And obviously it'll be empty when I initially create it. And then in the solution file, I'm going to go and create a new application. So let's just jump into my vehicle solution here. And so there's nothing in here right now, but I'm going to go and create a new app. And I'm going to choose to create a model-driven app as opposed to a Canvas app. And this is now where I get this choice of using the new modern app designer. You can also take existing model-driven apps and you can choose to edit them in the new modern app designer. And you can interchange. You can use the old one and the preview one interchangeably on the same app. It's, in quotes, just a different designer, but doing similar stuff to the solution underneath. Kind of. It's kind of true. So let's go and click create. So now I need to give my app a name. So let's call this my vehicle management app. And when I create this app, what you'll see is it essentially still has nothing in it. It's going to be empty. And so now that it's empty, I can go and create and add stuff to it. And this, the first thing I'm going to show you is adding navigation. They call it, let's call it pages. And so in the past, you had used a sitemap. You go and create a sitemap or edit a sitemap. So that concept from this designer is not there. It's gone. It's much better. And literally in my app, I have nothing. So now I can start by adding a page. So that's the first thing I need in my app. And I can choose different types of pages. And you can choose a table-based view or form, which is actually, stock standard, a list view. Or I can choose a dashboard, and these have always been there. And then the new thing is being able to add a page. But before I add a custom blank canvas page, let me just reference an existing entity that I have. So I have this table called vehicles already. So let's just choose this. And let me pop that in. And what you'll see is I have this list of vehicles and vehicle details already in the table. And hopefully you know what a registration number is and a make and model and all those things. But not too much on that. So what you'll see is I've got some navigation now on the left-hand side. And if I just jump here to navigation, I can change my navigation. So you'll see group 1, which is essentially my grouping. I can change this to my group heading. I'll call this information. Maybe I don't want vehicles to be called vehicles. So I can select that and call that cars, maybe. And it created sub area 1, which I don't actually need. So let's remove that. And I can go and add more. I can move them up and down, add new groups. And essentially, this is building my sitemap. And so life is good. Much better and much easier than using the sitemap designer that we used to have. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to show you. The next thing I wanted to show you is adding Canvas pages into this app. So if I click add page, I can now choose to add more, lists or dashboards, but now I'm going to choose this custom and click next. And now it says I'm going to go ahead and create a new custom page. So what I'm going to do is this list view that I have here, this grid of vehicles, I don't like the look of that. I want my own way of building that. So I'm going to come up with my own Canvas page to show vehicles. So I'm going to call this page vehicle, let's call it fancy vehicle listing. How's that? You can choose an existing custom page. Well, I don't have any in this app, so I can't choose any. So I have to create a new one. And what it's actually doing behind the scenes now is it's creating a Canvas app. It's creating a Canvas app, but the app type, it's a special new type of app, which is called page. And it starts with one screen in it. You can actually add more screens in it, but most of the time we expect that you would only have one screen, and this is what's going to be navigated to from that model-driven navigation. And now because it's a Canvas screen, literally, like in quotes, the world's my oyster, right? Like I can go in here and I can go and add controls, pictures, date pickers. I can go and connect to data. Go and choose not just Dataverse data, but data that's sitting in SQL, Oracle, and other connectors. One thing to note is that not all the controls that you get in normal Canvas apps are available. There are some that are missing, and not all connectors are available either. But on docs.microsoft.com, we list, kind of like which ones aren't available. And so, for example, from here, let me just go and check on a gallery. And from here, I'm going to go and connect this gallery to my Dataverse table vehicles. Okay, let's move that down a bit there. Actually, it's done a pretty good job. Maybe I just want that to be registration. Let's put this as the make of the vehicle. Okay, that's pretty cool. Maybe I want to make the icons a little bit bigger. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on the UI, but you get the idea. And obviously, I could be connecting it to related data or anything else. The other thing I can do is, as I said, you go and put on any control. So, for example, I can put on some buttons. So let's just pop this button here. Let's just change the text to alert. And there's a few other interesting things here. One is there's a default theme applied to all controls that are put on this page, which make them look like model-driven controls on a model-driven form. And So I could literally make a screen look like a model-driven screen if I wanted to, or at least the UI kind of looks consistent. And by default, that is the case. This button does look different to, if you just created a blank canvas app and put this button on. The other thing that we do, of course, get is your Power FX. So I can go and use normal Power FX. But there are also a few very specific functions that are designed to work because this is a page running within the context of a model-driven app. And so, for example, I can go now and do something like use the notify function, which is going to put a banner text on top of page, just as a demo here. And I can say this is going to be an information banner. Cool. And I'm going to publish this app. And I'm just going to save it as fancy vehicle listing. And so essentially it's created an app, but it's a single page app. And once I've published this, what you should see is in my solution, I'll now have this app, and the type will be page, which is pretty cool. There's a few other interesting things just while kind of this saving happens and this publishing happens. The one is this. We expect that you can have multiple pages, and therefore you could have multiple apps into your model-driven app. Each app that you add doesn't actually count towards your app count. So you get this license for Power Apps called a per app license. If you have one model-driven app, but you have lots of these page apps in it, it's still only one app. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so I published that. If I switch back to my model-driven designer, and this is where there's like a few bugs. You'll see a page not found. My car listing is here that I put earlier on. It's put in the link to my fancy vehicle listing page, but it's not quite working. And so you have to save and publish, and sometimes you have to publish multiple times, and there's like a bit of a sync issue between the two. But hopefully this should sort itself out in a second or two. And while we wait for this publishing to happen, are there any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. You mentioned that there was advantages to having an app, either a Canvas app or a model-driven app inside a solution. Sorry, I'm a noob. So, what are those advantages?
Well, so first off, you should always, if you're building even just a Canvas app, you should make it as a solution because it's the package that you can use easily to move between environments, version it. So there's lots of reasons why you should use solution files just in general. But later on, what you will see is when I do some interesting navigation between some of these pages in here, it asks for some of the internal names of objects, and you can't see the internal names of objects unless you have a solution file. So that's a very specific reason why you almost have to do it if you're doing this new hybrid type of app that's got model-driven, which you see here, and Canvas page, which you see hopefully in a second when this thing opens up. So let's see if it's going to come through. Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay. And yes, I can go and change the title here and stuff. And now if I just click play, now I'm going to run this new model-driven app. So we've got cars, which we always had. There we go. There's all the cars in my list. But if I go to my fancy vehicle listing page, this is a Canvas page. And it's not responsive by default, but well, now you do, that on Canvas apps, you can add the responsive containers. And so I can make this fully responsive. So when I make it smaller and it fits on a mobile screen, this would all format correctly. I put a little button on this Canvas app. Let's hit alert, and you'll see now I get the banner text on the top of the page. So that's an example of a function that's very specific for this type of scenario. Okay, so that's the basics. Pretty easy. You might hear my son laughing in the background. He's probably laughing at me. So yeah, so just some other FAQs. You don't have to explicitly share the Canvas app, that page, with others. You just share the model-driven app, and it will take care of making sure people have access to that Canvas page. This currently doesn't work in Teams. So if you put this model-driven app that I've just created inside a Teams team, when you get to the Canvas page, you're going to get an error. And yeah, and the rest are actually all mentioned as we went along. Just something else that's interesting is it actually does put the correct, as I said, it themes the controls to make them look like model-driven screens. So that's pretty good. But just there's a few little points here and there around like font sizes. And so in docs.microsoft.com, it gives you some guidance on how to deal with font sizes to make sure the font sizes also match what a model-driven page would look like if you want to make them consistent. Okay, so that's cool. So I've got a page, but now I want to be able to navigate between Canvas pages to model pages. So I'm on that Canvas screen, but for example, when I select one of those vehicles, I actually want to go to the page or the model-driven form for that vehicle, or I want to be able to create a new vehicle. So these are essentially, and you should be familiar with Canvas navigate functions. And so there's some cool things you can do. So let me just jump back to the designer. And let's add some more buttons. How's that? Actually, I'd probably only add 2, but anyway. Let's do this one. Let's make this one list view. And so when I click this button, I want to be able to be taken to the list view of all cars. So if I go to on select, navigate, and you can actually put other Canvas page names in here, and they'll jump to other Canvas pages in your solution as well. But here I just want to go to the list view page for vehicles. So you actually just put in the name of your vehicle entity / table. So that's it. And let's do this one here to take me to a new record. How's that? To create a new vehicle. So let's say new vehicle. And so in the on select of this one, navigate to, and you'll be familiar from Canvas apps on doing this. And this is how you do it in Canvas apps. This is how you create new records. And so when you do it in this hybrid app, it knows, oh, actually, I'll just take you to the form for creating a new vehicle. So it's pretty smart. So there's those 2. And the other thing I actually want to do is when someone selects a row here, how about when they select the image? Let's do it on the image. We want to actually take them to the record for that vehicle. So here we'll also navigate. But now we just navigate to the actual record, which is this item in terms of a gallery control. So it's actually just like you do in Canvas apps, but because there is no destination specified, you're not navigating somewhere, it just knows to take you to the default forms to use for these things. Okay, cool. So I'm going to hit save. Actually, I should have just hit publish because it would have saved it and published it for me. How are we doing? You still following?
I am. I just wanted to ask, would it be possible to show an example of an edit? I mean, using that same methodology that you're doing. So you've got an alert, you've got a list view, you've got a new vehicle, but if you wanted to edit an existing one?
Yeah, so that's what I've done here when I select a specific vehicle. So you should see that in a minute.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back here. Now and this is that sync issue I was talking about. I've updated this canvas page, but it hasn't actually updated here. And sometimes this can take a bit. And sometimes when you don't change UI stuff, you don't know if you've received the update. So it's good to always put like a little label on the screen that says V1, V2. This is just in preview while you have this issue. So I have to hit publish a few times and then it kind of picks it up. And I think if you are a newbie, like this topic is quite an advanced topic because you're mixing model-driven apps and Canvas apps. You can create the full editing, record solution, create, delete, etc., without mixing the two. There's just some scenarios where you want to mix Canvas apps and model-driven apps, and so that's what this is. And I'll probably get you, and I'll have to publish it again. You see, it still hasn't picked it up, so let's just publish again. Eventually it will. While that's going, let's just go check out the solution file, just to show you what's in there. So in the solution file, you'll see there's the model-driven app I created. There's a sitemap, which is when I'm changed the navigation. And here's the page, the fancy vehicle listing page. But in quotes, it's actually a Canvas Power app. And there's the internal name, which I'll need to use a little later on. Okay, there we go. So let's play this now. So if I go to my fancy vehicle listing page, if I click list view, it should take me directly to my list view. There we go. If I say new vehicle, it should take me to my new vehicle creation form. There it is. And then the other one was if I select a specific vehicle, an existing vehicle, so let's take 1024. You'll see now it's taking me to that vehicle page. So that's good. I've got navigation working one way. But there's also navigation the other way. In other words, I'm in a model-driven page and I want to open up a Canvas page. And when you do this, there's three modes. You can either open up the Canvas page full screen, so that's mode number one, or you can open it up as like a pop-up in the middle of the screen, so that's mode number two, or you can open it up as like a sidebar on the far right-hand side, which is option number three. And the way that you do this is right now it's done through JavaScript. So essentially, you need to inject JavaScript into the model-driven page and use specifically the navigate to function to open up these Canvas pages. And when you do this, the page type will always be custom. The name is the name that you'll find of the page from the solution. So that's why I said that solution name is very important, or that page name. And then there's some attributes. So for example, target 2 means it's going to show like this. If I use a 1, it'll be this. And if I use a 3, it'll be that. I can put a title to the window. And then those that are pop-ups or docked to the right, you can put a width parameter on it in terms of how wide you want that thing to be. So let me do this. I say quickly, but this is not necessarily all that quick. So let's get this working. Okay, so I've already created a JavaScript file that has this in. So I've got 3 different functions, one called open details. That's going to do full screen, so the target is 1. I've got open center dialog. There's another function I put together. And this is going to put it as a pop-up in the middle. And the last one is open a side dialog, and this is going to put it on the far right-hand side. Is that right? Sorry, position far right-hand side. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is put in the correct name of the page to open. And so this is where I need to go and get that page name. And I've never figured out how to copy and paste this. So let's pop it this way into Notepad. Well, let's make sure I type this right. Fancy.
Isn't there a view details page or something like that that you can show for it?
But there is, and it gives me the GUID. But I think you are right. It's probably there somewhere. Have I typed that correctly? Vehicle listing. I have. You get this wrong, you troubleshoot for hours. Yeah, so let's go. Pop that in there. Pop that in there. Here, save that off. Okay, so I've got my JavaScript file. And if you're familiar with model-driven apps, the way you inject JavaScript is essentially you add something called a web resource. So I'm going to add a new web resource. And let's upload the file. And there it is there. And I'm going to call this fancy. How's that? I can just spell. And the type is JavaScript. And that should be good. So let's save that. And publish that. So now I've got a web resource with 3 functions in that can pop up these canvas pages from a model-driven screen, but like, now I need buttons or something to press, right? And so I guess this then introduces the next thing you can do in this new designer, and that is being able to add buttons through the new command designer, the new command bar designer. So I can go in here now on this vehicle entity and say edit command bar. Now in the past, you'd have to use the workbench tool, probably through something like XRM Toolbox, and like mess with underlying XML to change buttons in a model-driven app. So now you've got this designer. And it allows you to go and say, okay, well, which buttons do you want to change? Do you want to change them in a grid view, so the list view, or do you want to change them on a form itself? So when I've opened up the vehicle form, change those ones, or in a subgrid or a related view. So let's just do the main grid for now. So hit edit. And so at the moment in preview, you can't edit existing buttons. So you'd still have to use Workbench to edit existing buttons, but you can add new ones. So if I go here and I click new command, it's going to give me a new button, and I give it a name and a label and an icon. And then I tell it to use that one of those functions from that JavaScript. Come along. Okay, so my label is, let's say, and I should probably actually go and create a page to open. That was all a bit silly, wasn't it? Okay, no one picked up that I'm going to open up this well, I guess we could just open up the existing canvas page. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We'll just use that existing canvas page. So let's call this center page. How's that? And we'll give it an icon. And the LinkedIn icon is not really going to be that useful. So let's go, I don't know, that one there. And what's pretty cool now, so on this button, you can run a formula when someone clicks it. And the formula we run is actually PowerFX. So you don't have to use JavaScript. You can actually use PowerFX, so the language of Canvas apps, on these buttons to some degree. So there's some functions available, but it's not everything. So for example, when someone selects this button, I could actually go and patch a record. So maybe you've got a button that has to update the status of this record. You can go and patch and update the status of the current record, or even a related record. You could also from here use that function like I used earlier on, notify and pop up a banner. So there is these things you can go and do in OnSelect just using PowerFX. But in order to open other pages, unfortunately, you have to do that through JavaScript. So the action is not going to be run a formula, it's going to be to run JavaScript. And so then it's saying, well, which JavaScript do you want to go and run? And because I uploaded that JavaScript file, it should be available to me. So let's search for it. And there it is. And now it's saying, okay, well, in that JavaScript file, what function are we going to call? And let's just do the open details function. Actually, let's do a pop-up. How's that? We'll call this one open center dialog. I was going to add 3 buttons and show you the examples of all, but I've taken my time, so I won't do all. Let's just save and publish. I'll just put 1 button. Also, what happens is when you call the button, you can pass the context of the current record or records that are selected. So if it's in the list view and you select a record and then you say, open details, then it can open a Canvas screen showing the details for that specific record as well. Maybe you don't like, so we just go back here. Maybe you don't like this screen, you want more of a Canvas style screen to show this in a much nicer way. Well, then you could do that. So that's what I was going to do. I forgot to do it, is to go and create a Canvas screen to show the vehicle details. But anyway, we won't do that. Okay. Just also something else while I'm here before I go and run this thing. You've also got a parameter or something you can change around visibility. In other words, when must it show this button? So you'll see it's currently set to always show. I can do it based on a PowerFX formula as well. So I can set the visible property, not hard coding it to true, but I could put an if statement here. So if this record, if this customer record I'm looking at is a premium customer, then show this extra button that allows me to escalate to someone, but otherwise don't show this button. So you can have logic that checks in the Dataverse for field values and then determine if it should display or not. Anyway, I'll just hit play. I guess you could also check against the roles table. So there's lots of things you could do. Hey, if you're this role, you see this button. If you're not, you don't. So now in my listing page, you'll see I've got this new button, center page. And this is where we cross fingers. There we go. It now opens the Canvas page in the center. So there's my Canvas page. But in theory, this would be more like a vehicle details page, not the listing page. Yeah, pretty cool.
Just to see what it does, can you just click on, for example, the edit icon or something? And cool.
Okay, so yeah, you can get pretty funky between the two worlds and make it so that users don't. I mean, we unfortunately still have to understand the difference between a Canvas app and a model app and bringing them together, but users don't want to care. And even if you just use, like, I was thinking, a basic example of just creating a Canvas page is maybe you want like a help link here. And this is just where you put like your own custom way of doing help or release notes. You know, there's lots of times where I've just wanted a way of having a page in my model-driven app that's, you know, I don't have to design through the model designer. I want freeform. Maybe it's analytics I want to put on here. You know, there's many scenarios like that. Okay, so yeah, so here I just give you some examples of the PowerFX formulas you can put on these buttons when you click them to like patch a record or notify a record, and even maybe setting the visible property based on if rows have been selected or not. So this here is only showing the if rows have been selected in the grid, otherwise it hides that button. And there's other functions you can use, like there's something called confirm. Confirm pops up a dialog, and if the person says yes to that confirmation dialog, then it's going to actually delete the current item. Would be that example. You can launch other URLs from buttons. Or in this example here, it patches a related record, so it actually creates a brand new record in a related table by clicking a button. So you know, you can see we're moving towards PowerFX instead of JavaScript, but there's still some things you have to use JavaScript for. Okay, so that kind of ends the new model app designer, which brings together Canvas pages and model-driven pages. I'll just quickly run through a few other cool new features. Jonathan mentioned this one earlier on. It's called the app side pane. So it allows you to open up a list or a form, and you'll see here these are normal model-driven pages, but they can also be Canvas actually, inside of a model-driven screen kind of docked to the right, and you can put a little icon, you know, on the right-hand side, and if they kind of get pinned and you open up like a details form, then as you cycle through the list view, then the details pane kind of stays open. And also it's JavaScript, and specifically the create pane function is what you call, and then you essentially specify what it is that you want to open. So for example, in this scenario here, we want to open, it's an entity list. In other words, it's a list, it's not a form, and then the name of the list you want to show. And then that would essentially create this view here. In this example here, you see the opening a form, not a list. So the page type is entity record, and you need to give in the entity name, actually the entity ID. So, yeah. So that's essentially the way that works. I'm not going to demo that. In-app notifications. So I think of these more as like toast. So toast notifications. They pop up and they kind of get pinned in the top right-hand corner in this little alert icon. And they stay here either for 14 days or for however long you've programmed them to stay, or until the person dismisses them. So they're notifications to tell your users to do something or alert them of something. So this is also in preview. And basically the way that it works is there's a new set of tables or a new entity that's called notification or app notification. And all you essentially have to do is go and create records in this entity. And so you can do it through JavaScript, so through create record. And you give it a title and a body, And there are other things you can go and do. So you can give it like what type of icon you want. You can specify how long it should stay for, etc. And then who, which user this is assigned to. So maybe only certain users should see this toast or this notification. This is one way to create it, but literally you could create it anyway. As long as you put the record in the table, it'll work. So you could put it through the web API, you could put it through Power Automate, another Canvas app, model app, whatever, it doesn't matter. But you just create a record in this table, and now you've got notifications. So that's pretty cool as well.
Michael?
Yeah.
Do the notifications appear irrespective of what app you're in? They're just part of your experience on the Office 365 platform?
No, these are specifically for model-driven apps. So it'll only show when you're in the model-driven app that this notification is bound to, if you want to say that, yeah. Yeah, so you won't see it like in Canvas apps, you won't see it in your email. Yeah. Okay, and then the last one is App Insights integration. So we've had Azure App Insights integration for Canvas apps for some time. In other words, I want my Canvas app to send instrumentation data to Azure App Insights. You know, how is it performing? You know, how long does one page take to open, fetch data, all those things. Now you can do it for model-driven apps as well. And it's pretty straightforward. You just go to the admin center, the Power Platform admin center. You go to this new section, which is the data exports area. And you'll see here there's an App Insights tab. You click here and you say new export, and then you can configure instrumentation to Azure App Insights. You need to specify your Azure App Insights subscription, and that's pretty much it. Now they'll start sending instrumentation to Azure App Insights. So pretty straightforward, and you can go and start playing with that now. So that's it. That's my quick tour of bringing model-driven apps and Canvas apps together through the new modern model app designer, a mouthful, and in there creating Canvas pages and model apps, navigating between the two, the new command bar designer. So that's all pretty cool. In preview, not actually really supposed to be used for production yet, but you can go and start playing with it. And then the other three things, app side panes and model-driven apps, in-app notifications and model-driven apps, and being able to send instrumentation data to Azure App Insights through your model-driven apps. And with that, I'm going to stop and check if there's any questions.
Michael?
Yes.
So I should find out, will Microsoft in the future maybe have an option where you can convert a model-driven app that you already have into a modern model-driven app designer? Like you have an existing model-driven app, but you open it in this kind of format.
Yeah, you can do that already.
Oh,
so
okay.
you just go to it. For example, if I go to an existing solution that I have that's got a model-driven app in it, let's go to my recruitment model-driven app. And I just take the model-driven app that's in here. You'll see there's edit and preview. So you just do that. And now I've got it. Now, if I go, I can take this one now and contribute to it using the new designer.
So you don't lose any functionalities, all is still.
No, there's some things I'll still have to do through the classic. You'll see there's switch to classic, which will be the old designer. But yeah, I mean, it's all working. I can see my applicants, and you know, in here I can literally now go and add a page. I can add my custom page, and now maybe I want, you know, in my recruitment app for HR, I want a section here which is, you know, terms and conditions on how you should, you know, do recruitment. Or maybe I want some type of page that easily allows them to schedule Teams meetings. You know, I don't know. I'm making it up, but
any changes you make on this one don't affect your default one.
Well, it's editing the fundamental app. It's editing the solution. So yes, you know, everyone who uses it will see the new experience.
Okay.
So you better hope the preview isn't broken.
Yeah,
let's hope it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Mark. That was really awesome to see you.
Cool beans. Good luck, team. Enjoy playing with it.
Yeah, Michael, one thing on that App Insights was very cool is that you can also set up alerts and metrics on that. So as your Power Platform is pushing telemetry data into App Insights, if, for instance, there's a thing that you're looking at, you know, if there's an alert or whatever, then you can follow the process around that as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, cool. That's very cool.
Telemetry perspective, yeah. So if it's slow running or pages are not loading or something like that, then you get notified, the admins.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very, very cool. Okay.
Good. Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate it. Any other questions for Mark? Okay, perfect. So, Monet, over to you to do the COE stuff.
Thank you very
Through
much.
what updates are in there and that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jonathan. Let me quickly also share my screen. Okay, so thank you, everybody. The first thing is that with the COE, in case you don't know what that is, that stands for Centre of Excellence. I like to describe it as the fundamental building block for any Power Platform because it gives you insight into the environment. There's also a bunch of applications that help you administer and also give your users the best experience in that environment. And when I talk about experience, certain things like if they need to request new environments, how do you govern that? If there is applications that need to go into a backlog or even feature set, how you do that? When you bring new people into an environment, they need to get assets to learn and educate. How do you do that? So the COE has got a bunch of those functions available. So today I'm just going to touch on some of the key changes that came out. So it's between August and September. You'll see this is quite recent. It's been 6 days ago. The first thing I need to mention is that when you update the COE kit, there is some changes that happen. So if you have an older version of the COE starter kit, then you need to do an upgrade on the environments in a specific order or on the solutions. And you'll see here they take you through that on how to do that. So you just do updates and then you can essentially start importing the new solutions. Due to the release cycle, it happens very quickly that you can also fall behind on, the latest and greatest updates. That actually happened to me. I use this on a fairly regular basis, but you need to actually sit and make sure that you've got the latest kit installed. So for today, I only want to touch on two COE elements that was released. So the first one is the environment request feature, and the other one is the command center. So firstly, for on the command center, let me just go into the command center itself. Let's find it over here. Is that a command center is, think of it as your centralized point where you can set up things like bookmarks and you can also set up things like what's the news from a Power App perspective, and then also additional things like, where can I get help and support from? And when I mean help and support, it's the Microsoft Docs site. So the great thing is that if I think of some of the engagements I had with customers, they're always asking me, we need a centralized point where we can have apps available for the organization. We need to skill people up. And I think lastly is that, we need to know what's new and happening. I rely quite heavily on the community and our partners and everybody like that to help them with the latest news. And the command and setup center is in actual fact quite great with that. So first thing first, you'll see that is a Canvas app that you've run. And you can just go and edit bookmarks and add bookmarks in there. So let's say I want to add another bookmark. Let's say I call it YouTube. I can give it a link. And I can actually say, what is this resource? So you can see it's an app. You can also specify Power BI, Teams, a SharePoint site, YAML, or even forms. So in my case, it's just a URL. And then it gives you two options here. You can either say you do want to show this in the command center or you want to hide it, right? So when I say save here, you'll see that, let me just maybe edit an existing one. In here, I specify it's an app. I give it a link to the environment request app, and I say, okay, where it needs to be shown, right? So that's where you can set up these type of requests or apps rather that you bookmark in a centralized place, right? From a maker experience is a little bit different, right? So from a maker perspective, what they'll see is that if they open the app, they'll just see the end result of that. So inside here, this is now my different applications that I specified bookmarked that's available. What a user also can do is when they click on the news, it in actual fact goes and fetch an RSS feed and bring back all the news available to that user. So you'll see here there's a bunch of things in here. That's what Jonathan mentioned earlier today about the new formats that's available. I can actually go click on that and it will open up that article for me, right? So there's that latest article. Another thing that you can do from a maker perspective is that I can go into the learning path, right? So it shows me here all my learning fundamentals that's available. And what's quite great, it shows me the different paths for who's it geared to and also what level. So let's say I want to learn how to get started with Dataverse. All that I can do is I can click on that and it will in actual fact open up that Microsoft Docs site that takes me through that, right? So that is the first, I think, great new release from the COE kit, right? Is the way that you can set up the command center for easy access for people to use. And then the next part is with the COE kit is in actual fact the environment requests, right? So if I think of environment request, one of the key fundamentals that you have with Power Apps or Power Platform and environments is that when you start governing environments, you need to have people request environments, give justification for that environment, and then also administer that environment. And this is exactly what happens with this request center. So what you'll see is that I can add a new request. The first thing it will ask me what's the connectors that I want to use. So you'll see there's quite a few. There is all the connectors that is available. So let's say I want to use Dataverse. I can select that. And now I need to say for who am I creating this environment, who's going to be the admins for this environment. So let's say I want to have Ellie as an admin and I go next. And now it's going to ask me for, you know, the name of that environment and why do I want to use it. So let's maybe call this side panel because we've just seen it now. I can also specify what's the type of environment that I want to use, a sandbox of production, and then also in what region that environment should be. So you'll see this is exactly the same as in the admin center of the Dataverse. I can also specify why do I need that environment. So I can say testing new functionality. And then I can actually say, you know, delete this environment after a specific time. So it will ask me how long do you need this environment. So think of it as if you have a playpen, or you're doing a POC, or you're doing training, you can actually specify how long this environment needs to live for, right? Then lastly is that you can specify that you need a database for this environment. It will create a Dataverse for you. And then when I select new, it just asks me some last few questions, you know, like what's the language? I can say I want it in English, and then also what is your currency that you want it in. In our case, we want it in ZAR. Now with the security groups, sometimes what you can do as well is you can govern who's got access to the environments through security groups and admins. So this is quite a neat function, a neat feature. So definitely look into that. So when you spin up environment, you can actually also lock it down with a specific security group as well. Only people in that security group can have access. So let me just do that. So you'll see what's happening here is it says form submitted successfully. And then my status here is pending, right? So as an end user, I've now submitted a request that I want to have that side panel environment for 30 days. And then from an admin perspective, what will happen is that, if I just open it here, you'll see that there's currently no request at the moment. If I refresh this, it will show me there's a little 1 in my inbox. It will in actual fact show me the request that is there. And when I look at this request, if I open it a little bit and I say view, you'll see that there's a lot more information around that, right? So it gives me the basic information around my tenant, and then also it shows me what is the policies that's being impacted. Now the policies here is the DLP policies. So if I have policies in here that's connected to this Dataverse, it will show up here and tell me, listen, yeah, this is, you know, what I can do. Now at the same time, what I can do here, it shows me what connectors are blocked and what connectors are restricted, also what connectors are being used. But I can also add notes in here to say anything that I want to update in here. So let's say I want to say a great demo on this, and I can save that. It saves the notes. And then what I can do is I can approve or reject it. So let's say I approve it. Then what will happen is that this environment will in actual fact in the background be created through a flow, and the users will be added, and the environment will be, you know, the admins will be added to it, and there's a bunch of things that they actually add into the environments when you create it like this. So this is a very great and easy way for you to go and use the COE just to build out your environments, and then also have users request that environments. And I think secondly is also to have a look at things like what, you know, how can you have a centralized point where people can view and make requests and also see what's new happening in the environments, right? Just to maybe notify you guys, if you go into the COE starter kit GitHub page, you'll see there we can see all the features in here. And in actual fact, if I click on the latest feature, it will show me what's been completed. Let me just go back one more. It will show me exactly here. Let's scroll a little bit down. All the change logs of things have been updated and have been completed and been fixed. So it's really a great mechanism to track what's, you know, what is new, and also you can see there's quite a lot on the team that's working on that. And with that, it's the quickest and easiest way that I can maybe specify the changes and the new things that inside of this COE starter kit. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Jonathan. Thank you.
Thanks, Morné. It's really cool to see, and it's definitely a great resource to make use of. So if you haven't checked out the COE already, go check the links and you can start downloading it and putting it in. Thanks for that, Morné. I really appreciate it. Any questions for Morné? Okay, perfect. So lastly, we've got David with a tech tip. David, over to you.
So just wondering, who won the 10 tip thing from Michael?
I don't think anyone did. No one yelled out bingo.
Yes, that's too bad, huh? Because we had these awesome prizes and everything.
David, but you yelled out bingo. You typed out bingo.
Actually, yeah, so you can give yourself a prize, David.
Thanks, man. Looking forward to it. Cool. So, get going. So, for the tech tip of today, I think this is probably something that a lot of people know already, but this is like URL parameters. So here we've got a simple Power App that is just showing two parameters that I'm passing in the URL. So I'm doing a question mark, and then I'm saying the name is Donald and the surname is Duck. And then the Power App reads that and writes that into a variable, and it displays that into a page, or into a screen. Sorry, we're back in Canvas apps now. So is there anybody that wants me to deep dive into this a little bit on this parameters portion of it, or is everybody happy with how this works? So just to quickly, if there's anybody interested, all that we're doing is there's a param function in Power Apps, and that allows you to read that. So if we go and say, if there's a parameter called name, then send it to the launch. Sorry, if there's not one called name, then go to the launch screen. Otherwise, go to the launched screen. All right. So, and then the launch screen just basically maps these values from the parameter functions into these fields, into this variable, and then displays it in here. All right, so that's it. That's pretty straightforward. I don't think there's too much new in there. And but what I want to demo is how you can use the launch function in conjunction with URL parameters and one or two other cool things that in the past, I don't know if it didn't work or if I just didn't get it to work, but in the past, I had some issues with it and it wasn't reliable, and it would work and then it wouldn't. So, you know, again, if anybody in this call had any other experience with this or any experience in this that they'd like to add, you know, you're more than welcome to come off mute. But essentially, what we're doing is in the new window button, I'm going to show you how you can pass all of these parameters in a normal record. So you don't have to go and do concatenate with your URL string to build in all of the various pieces of information that you want to pass into the destination web session. All right, so you could use launch. So what I'm doing here is I've just got a link to this, the URL to this current app, just in this text box, just to make it visible. So I'm just passing that to the launch function, and then I'm going to pass it a record. And this is a normal Power Apps record where you can go and add fields and all of these sort of things. You don't need to worry about anything. You can just go and specify the fields and the values, and then Power Apps would automatically build these into your URL parameters, which is extremely handy, especially if you're dealing with complex destination URLs that you're dealing with. So to just show you how that works, if we now click on this, you'll see this opens a new window, and I'm not sure why that happened. Okay, probably it's because I'm doing it out of Studio. It's probably saying you shouldn't be doing this in Studio. So that's fine. I won't do it in Studio then. So I'm just going to take that out to go to the launch screen. So over here, if I go and click on new window, it now launches that URL that I've specified, and it automatically builds the URL string with the properties in that object that or in that record that I've specified in the parameter. So this is really, really useful. All right, so that's the first thing that I wanted to show you. And then the second one is the destination window. So you'll see in the parameters for the launch function, first of all, you've got the address, which is pretty self-explanatory. Then you've got parameters, and that's what we just discussed now. This is this bad boy over here, so this record or this object. But then as a third parameter is optional, and that is the destination or the target. So you could either just leave that blank, or you can go and specify, always launch this in a new window. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to the app in published mode, and you'll see that every time I click on this, it opens up a new window, right? You see that? It's not going to use, even though the URL is exactly the same, it's not going to use that URL. It opens up a new instance of that URL. The second option that you have is to replace the window, and then it's going to replace the current window that is being executed from. So if I go and click launch on the published version, you'll see that that launches it into the same tab, and because there are some URL parameters, it goes to that screen. And that could be useful in certain instances, and then you could use back to get into the original place where you were. So, you know, it's a couple of things to keep in mind with that, but in general, that works very well. Now, the third one is the one that I don't know if it didn't work in the past or if I couldn't get it to work. But there, if you specify a normal text string in the target, that'll actually launch a new tab in your browser and associate this name with it. So if in future you have another link that you launch and you specify the same name, it's actually going to reuse that tab. So you'll see if I go into the published version and I say go and replace specific tab, it's going to open up a new tab. But if I go and click on that again, it's just going to continue to take me back to that tab, which I've associated a name with. And that's pretty cool as well. So think of instances where you don't want the user to go and click on a link and open the app 30 times, because now they're working in one session and they go and change a record, and that creates a conflict with something that they're doing in the other session, and that's just a nightmare. So with this way, you can actually force them that regardless of how many times they launch that link, it's going to open up the same tab in the browser. So that's very, very useful. And that's what I wanted to show you today as a quick tech tip. I do have a question though. And seeing that we didn't give away these awesome prizes earlier, maybe for the person who can answer this question gets to take home the grand prize. So the question is, if I have tabs open in a browser, all right, so let's say I've got Google open there and Bing open there. Is there a way to go and identify what these tabs are called, if anything? What I mean by that is, if I'm launching this, if I'm using this and I'm specifying this alias name or this virtual attribute for the destination tab, is there a way to go and see if there's an existing tab that you could reuse and to see what that name is? Are there any clever guys on this call who can answer that question?
I'll take a guess. It probably is yes.
DevTools, maybe? I'm guessing as well.
Yeah, so I'm actually, seriously, I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. I spoke to some of the guys, and we couldn't get to an answer. So it feels like there has to be a way. It feels like this association, I mean, this is obviously not something unique to Power Apps because the browser is responding to it. So this is obviously something that the browser needs to understand. But I was just thinking, if I want to...
What's your question? Are you asking how to identify the name of Google? Or
No. So over here, once I've launched this function, it's going to associate this name. It's almost like a system name to the tab in which it creates, it opens up, right? But if I now not use Power Apps launch function, if I go and open up a browser like I did over here, how would I go and check if there's a name associated to this, and if I could reuse that name? So if I then go back into the Power App, and let's say we found through DevTools that this thing is called Google Tab, whatever, that we could click on that link and it'll go and open up the tab that had Google in it. Does that clarify the question?
what if you use the IP in Power Apps? Won't work.
Sorry, the IP?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. So that's going to assign an IP to the name of this tab. So I don't think that's going to give us what we're looking for. Are we seriously going to take these awesome prizes, or the grand prize back into the closet?
David, I can give it a go.
Okay, please.
Yeah, so I think that the DOM elements create a window.name.
Okay.
And you can probably query the DOM and get the name, but you have to set that through JavaScript.
Okay.
When you work with JavaScript. Yeah.
All right. So there's no easy way that we're going to get to it now in the call quickly.
I go to console and type in something like I think window.name or something like that. Try the one with the Power Apps. With the Power App name in it.
Okay, so let's go and launch this. Look at that. Okay, so you win the grand prize.
Mornay wins it.
So, okay, that's very cool. I like that. But so what this means is if you just open it up normally, it doesn't assign a name to it. So if we go to here,
This is quite a tech tip of note.
okay, so it means that it doesn't assign a name to it if it's blank. So because I found this, but I couldn't see what this does. There is a way that in here you can go and actually right click on this, and where do you do this now? I can't remember. Okay, so
And if in your target you have an empty string, what happens?
nothing. It's an optional. That's just going to open up a new screen because then you're not associating a name to it. So
Yeah, don't leave it out. Just put an empty string.
oh, look at that. I see what you're doing there. So let's just go and add another. Okay, so let's go and launch this without those things. I'll just pretend that I didn't see all of these errors down here. Okay, cool. So there we go. So let's go and check. Oh, so that just opens up a new one. Oh, so that assumes that it's a new unnamed tab. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Thanks, Mornay. That's awesome, man. I was actually looking for that. So I don't know. Do you want to know what your prize is now, or do we just do that later?
Look, I also need to buy Christmas gifts, so that would be cool.
This will be an awesome Christmas gift, you know. So what we've decided is, you know, everybody, you know, with modern workplace and all of this stuff, everybody needs some, you know, some time from somebody now and then. And what we decided to do is to give an hour of Michael's time for any type of Power Platform consulting. I remember in the conversation he said something specifically, he loves conversation about licensing and these sort of things. So, so Mornay, congratulations, man. I'm sure that's going to make an awesome gift. Spend it wisely, give it to somebody well deserving.
Thank you very much.
You're a bunch of funny people, eh?
Oh, that's funny.
I guess
Any
that's what I
questions?
get for saying that David's going to give a prize that wasn't agreed upon.
Yeah. Backfired slightly.
Any questions on the launch or URL parameters or anything like that?
I've got one. What happens if when you're running this inside of a Teams window or like inside of a mobile app or something?
Sorry, I'm going through a tunnel. You're breaking up.
So what will happen if you run this
I'm joking.
viewing something in Teams window or through a mobile app or something?
All right, so
it's not a browser.
No, I'm joking. I wasn't going through a tunnel. I just didn't feel like answering that difficult question. Okay. So as far as I'm aware, in Teams, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think it'll just launch a browser, I suspect. I know in a mobile device, you can go and actually call certain prefixes. So you can go and call a model-driven app or something by passing certain call to parameters. I don't know what the nice word for those things are. But you can go and say mail to, and then it should essentially launch the mail client on the mobile device. So, Mike, do you or Jonathan or anybody, do you know what the model-driven app is? I can't remember now, but you can actually launch an app directly from here by putting some prefix in the URL.
I don't recall what the prefix is.
You can also launch Canvas apps as well.
Yeah. So in a similar, but there you just specify the. Do you also put a prefix in there, Michael? Do you know?
Oh, it's been a while. I don't know. I can go and open up a sample app I've got and check. But
Oh, that's a great question, Tian. I think we can, if anybody's quick on search, we can give you the answer now. Otherwise, we can check it later. Give it
I
to
guess
you.
I can play as well. It's just easier to ask.
But the bottom line is, yes, it does work, and you can specify some wizardry that'll launch different things on the phone. So that's pretty cool.
So, David, I've got a question around this. Is the idea is that you build almost like a core app, and then you build apps separately, and you pass the context between those apps?
So with are you talking about the URL parameters and this record?
The whole launch thing. So I think if you take, I think there's a Thrive app or an HR app or something like that consists of a bunch of smaller apps, but you've got one app that you launch. Is it similar? That's kind of why would you use Launch or what?
So one thing that we've used Launch for quite extensively is if you think of something like an application directory. So you want to create a central place for people to go to and then see all of the apps by department, by records that are currently assigned to them in each one of those apps and how many of those are overdue, kind of thing. So think of a screen like that you can see all of your apps with indicators of where you need to pay attention to. And then you can actually click on that and that'll launch it into a new window. Instead of going through to powerapps.com or home.dynamics.com and then go to find the app and look for the app that you're looking for and all of these sort of things. Not a lot of people know this, but this screen, okay, so if you go and create, this screen over here is actually not, powerapps.com is actually not where normal consumers should go. So if you're a normal business user in an environment, you shouldn't be going to powerapps.com to access your Power Apps for leave and these sort of things. You should actually be going through to Dynamics, because if you set up another environment, for an example, and earlier you covered how to set up a security group for that environment. So if you're in an environment as a normal user, but you're not a maker, you can't navigate to that environment through this make.powerapps.com. You actually have to hit it through the Dynamics URL. Otherwise, you can't get to the app listing.
That's interesting. Is it the Dynamics URL or is it Office 365?
Yeah. So if you, for an example, if you go to the Dynamics URL, it'll show you all the apps that you have access to, including so there's the link, home.dynamics.com. So if you go to home.dynamics.com, it's going to show you all of the apps that you have access to, both Canvas and model driven. And this is actually the consumer. What's it? That can't be right.
No, it is. It's been deprecated. So
nice.
you now have to access it from portal.office.com.
Okay.
Or just office.com. So yeah.
But anyway, so I think the to keep in mind is if you create another environment, normal users can't browse to that environment to go and look at all the apps if they don't have app maker roles in that environment. So that's quite a big thing to keep in mind.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Cool.
I think you've lost me a bit there. How do you say I've gone to Portal at Office and there's just the homepage? How would you get to the apps from there?
So you'll send them a link, for an example. If I don't know if everybody's got access to the Dynamics URL, but you can't just give them powerapps.com and have them go to make.powerapps. They're not going to be able to browse to that thing. So if you've got Dynamics shows you all of the apps, and I suspect maybe this is business apps over here.
Yeah, so this is the new place where you need to go to. And you can also just type the name in the search bar. So if you know the name of the app, you just put it in the search bar at the top.
Okay.
And yeah, this is canvas and model will show up.
All of it, yeah.
Mm.
Okay, well, that's very cool. I'm used to using the other one, but I haven't noticed that it was deprecated. When was that? When did that happen?
So it was announced about a year ago, I'm guessing.
What?
Yeah, but they actually only turned it off in the last couple of weeks.
That's very rude.
Yeah.
All right, but anyway, so I think, just keep that in mind. I've seen a couple of caveats around that.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
Looks good. Thanks, David. Great tip. And I learned something new, so I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Okay, so we are at the end, more or less. So we're just going to have an open floor now. Is there anyone that wants to share something cool that they're doing that they feel others can take advantage of or be inspired by? The floor is now yours. Anyone that wants to come off mute and just share something? If you don't have something prepared now, that's fine. Just keep in mind for the next meetup, then you will have an opportunity to present something, okay?
And if you do a good job, you might win some awesome prizes.
Like time with Michael.
I've got a question actually. With the new JSON file types that supported, in your Canvas application, right? If you save your navigation, your config, all of that in a JSON format, would you be able to go and retrieve that JSON from that file type on the app startup and then apply the changes onto the app, or does it not work that way?
You're talking about parsing the JSON?
Well, I'm just saying that, I mean, on the app startup, is the connectors available already? So you can make a call to that new file type of JSON, pull that information and then pass that, and then your app will actually run.
I don't know. You talk about Canvas apps, right?
Yeah.
So I know that you still can't. So parse, P-A-R-S-E. So you can't parse the JSON in Power Apps and Canvas apps yet that I know of. It's something that I've been waiting, and I'd be very happy if that comes through. I think it's actually still out there as an idea on Power users. But yeah, so as far as I know, you won't be able to parse it in Canvas apps so that you can actually work with it as JSON or PowerFX. It'll just come through as a string, as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
Or is that the idea, that it's actually parsed?
Well, I think that a lot of the time your configuration and your navigation and those things are saved as JSON, right? It's actually almost embedded in the app itself. Like if you go look on an app startup or collections or something like that, the JSON is kind of pulled up there and saved there. I'm just wondering that if you take that out and you save that into the Dataverse, and then when your app kind of starts up, it can retrieve that from the Dataverse and apply that onto your application. I wonder if that's possible through the app startup function.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But check that link and please go and vote for that parse JSON in Power Apps. It's been there since December 2019.
Oh, okay.
It's got 664 votes. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Anything else from anyone? Okay, great stuff. So with that, thanks everyone for your time tonight. If you do want to stick around and have a look at the studio and how I run things, I will don't mind taking you through it quickly. But otherwise, feel free to drop off. We look forward to seeing you next month. Okay. As I said, if there are any questions, If you guys do want to get involved, if you want to share some stuff maybe, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll happily slot you in. Otherwise, we'll have an open floor in each episode so you have the chance to present back and just ask your general questions and that. Okay. Like I said, we want to keep this as a community. We want everyone to get involved in it. The more, the better. Okay.